What's up, everybody? David Myhall here, and it has been another crazy week in crypto. I'm coming to you guys right now from Belgrade, Serbia, where I'm currently hiding out from COVID. That means this is my third episode, and they've all been filmed in different continents. So that's kind of cool. Next week, I'll join you from Australia. I'm just kidding. A lot of news this week. We're going to start off with some things that have happened on Balancer. If you're not familiar with Balancer, this is a new DeFi protocol on Ethereum. It's an automated market maker, kind of similar to Uniswap, but it adds a lot of really cool features. And a week ago, one of these Balancer pools got drained. I actually started seeing this like right after I filmed last week's video, so I've been thinking about this one for a bit. This attack involved a token called Statera. This is a token that is a deflationary token. What that means is every time you transfer the token, a small percentage of that transfer gets burned. The idea being the supply will decrease as the token is used and it'll become more valuable. Now what this attacker did is they took out a flash loan, traded in and out of this pool a bunch of times, which decreased the amount of Statera in the pool. And then because that shifted the price of the pool, they were able to trade and withdraw like all the other tokens in the pool. I think was mostly ETH. Now there's a lot to break down in this hack. I'll start with the token itself, or this idea of deflationary tokens. Now this is an interesting idea. Of course, a lot of people got into the space with the idea of making a better money. That was the original pitch of Bitcoin, and a project like Statera seems to be saying, the US dollar, they keep printing more of it. What if we had a currency where the more people used it, there became less of it? That would really encourage people to hold. Cool idea, but I mean, in practice, this would be really easy to circumvent. You just make another token that wraps Statera, and now you can transfer that wrapper and avoid this deflationary system. So I'm not that bullish on the Statera token itself, but this attack is super interesting. These DeFi and smart contract attacks, they're really interesting in general. You can compare this to like all the exchange hacks we used to see, which was basically just an attacker got their hands on a private key, they took the money. That's it. These DeFi attacks, they're really interesting. They're usually using very complicated smart contract code, doing a lot of different transfers and transactions and taking advantage of things like flash loans. So when these things happen, of course I feel bad for people who lost their money. Like that's always a bad thing, but people like me, we also are fascinated by these attacks and how they work. I was actually the victim of one of these attacks a while ago where I lost a bit of money, but I was also like impressed by how the attacker was able to do it. I'll definitely make a video about that someday. But it's also sometimes hard to say who was at fault. In this case, every piece of this system worked correctly. Balancer worked correctly, Statera worked correctly. Those two pieces just didn't mesh well. Balancer ended up basically taking the blame for this attack. They've said they would reimburse everyone whose funds got stolen from this pool. They've also said that they would pay out a bug bounty that was previously reported about a similar attack, but when it was reported, they said, oh, well, this is like economically infeasible. And they didn't consider flash loans. So let's talk about flash loans. If you don't know what a flash loan is, it's super interesting. I think this is maybe one of the most interesting things that we've invented in this new world of blockchains and decentralized finance. Flash loans is a feature of a protocol that'll basically let you borrow unlimited money with no collateral on the condition that you have to repay that money within the same transaction. That means you can borrow some money and then you can arbitrage or trade or do whatever you want with it. But if you don't return that money before your code finishes executing, the whole transaction will be voided and you never got the money in the first place. Now, flash loans have been used in a number of attacks. Like in this case, you can take millions of dollars, move it around, shift prices on decentralized exchanges. Some people have said flash loans are bad, that they open up these attacks, but what I'd say is flash loans, they don't open up any attack surfaces that weren't already possible if you were rich. If you can steal money using $1 million worth of tokens, you could already do that if you had $1 million. So I see flash loans as not really opening up these attacks, but kind of more like democratizing them, I guess. That's probably not the right word, but they make these attacks accessible to any person, not just whales. And this is a good thing. Without flash loans, it might have taken like years for there to be this much level of money in this space where someone did this attack. But because of flash loans, someone was able to do this attack with no upfront capital. And now we've learned from this problem and we recognize it and we can address these problems before we put tons of money into the system. So that was a whole very interesting attack. We did see a few kind of copycat attacks after. Some were just using other deflationary tokens, but some were using attacks to kind of steal the comp tokens that are being accumulated in some of these pools. I don't want to get too much into the details, but some of these pools, they're accruing comp tokens. And basically the liquidity providers to these pools can kind of claim these tokens and push them into the pools. But until someone like pulls those tokens in, they're kind of up for grabs, which means someone was able to take a flash loan, take over like basically the entire balancer pool, suck all the comp tokens out, and then kind of exit that pool again. Some really interesting attacks. This one I think is less of a big deal. Nobody had money really stolen from them. They just lost like the opportunity cost of these tokens that should have been eventually distributed to the pool holders. I still really think Balancer is an awesome project, so this is not dissuading me from their project at all. I think they're still going to be really successful, and I don't know, the team has been very generous by kind of reimbursing people whose funds have been stolen, so I think that just speaks well to their character. Next up is Compound. So Compound has really been kind of the centerpiece of this whole yield farming, liquidity mining movement. Lots of people, lots of money are going into Compound, people trying to earn these comp tokens, which have a pretty high value. And for a bit, like one of the best ways to do that was to lend and borrow the basic attention token or BAT token. This week, comp holders, the basically governance DAO of the system, voted to change the rules about how comp is distributed. After these rules have been changed, it's now less profitable to liquidity mine with BAT, more profitable to liquidity mine with stablecoins like DAI and USDC. Now, I think this is probably a good change since, I don't know, DAI, USDC, these are just tokens that are way more in demand. If you're a lending service, like, I don't know who's borrowing BAT, but people definitely want to lend and borrow stablecoins. Now, fiat-backed stablecoins like USDC have done fine with this change. You know, if you want to create more USDC, you just need to move more money into Coinbase and then mint these tokens. But this change has been tough for DAI. There's basically a lot more demand for DAI right now, which has pushed DAI off of its peg. Last time I checked, one DAI was worth about $1.02 when it should be just worth $1. And yeah, there's a lot of discussions about, can the system make up this demand? The MakerDAO system doesn't really provide like great incentives for minting DAI and providing liquidity. It seems like the system was made with the assumption that there would be more demand for minting DAI than owning DAI, but we're kind of seeing the opposite of that. And this is showing there's now this big economic incentive to suck DAI into Compound. So it's like any DAI that gets created by the system is going to end up in Compound. And I don't know, it doesn't really seem like the MakerDAO system is set up to handle that demand. Now, the MakerDAO team has released some plans for some new liquidity pools. Like, I'm sure they're going to come up with some new systems to address this issue. MakerDAO is it's an interesting project. They're really the father of this DeFi movement. A lot of other DeFi protocols that have come after them, like Compound, they're really kind of modeled on MakerDAO's system of over-collateralization and lending and things like that. And while there's a lot of different lending and trading protocols that are all kind of competing with each other, we haven't really seen a true competitor to MakerDAO. And the reason is it's just really hard what they're doing. Creating a decentralized stablecoin, that's a very difficult task. I'm sure we're going to see some more competitors rising up. We're already starting to see a few, but the system is not perfect, but it's really complicated, and they've done a good job so far. The system has done well in times like Black Thursday when the price of ETH plummeted. They're continuing to kind of make adjustments to the system to reflect the changing space. So It'll be interesting to see how the system handles these changes in incentives, but I'm optimistic. I think something will get figured out. So next up, Curve Finance has released their model, basically their plan for distributing their governance token called CRV. Curve is another really awesome project. I'm looking forward to seeing how this goes, but this just kind of reflects this bigger change that we're seeing in the space of lots of interest in DeFi. DeFi tokens are skyrocketing. More and more projects are trying to release these governance tokens, partially to decentralize, but there's just a lot of money rushing in. You can make a lot of money if you release a token right now. But one thing I think we got to keep in mind with all these new tokens is, what is the actual value of the token? How does it accrue value? The MKR token from MakerDAO is an interesting token. It is a governance token. It lets you vote on how the system is run. But also, when the system is operating correctly, the system will buy and burn tokens. And if it breaks, like in the case of Black Thursday, it will mint more tokens to recapitalize. So it's not just a system for voting. This token is a part of the whole economic system of that protocol. Whereas a lot of these other tokens, they're not at this point. The comp token from Compound, it just lets you vote. I'm guessing at some point they will make a change so that the token does accrue value. But I think we're also going to see a lot of projects that come out with this governance token that don't have a pathway to making the token accrue value at some point. And that's where we're going to see kind of a real bubble emerge. So my advice would be, as you see projects releasing new tokens, pay attention to what are the actual economics of that token. We might be heading back into 2017 again. Buckle in. But as many people have said, the biggest difference between 2017 and now is that now we have working, functioning systems with demand. 2017, we just had white papers. Next up, so the latest Gitcoin Grants round ended a couple days ago. This round was a little bit different. One thing I noticed is I think this was the first round where a lot of projects made more money from the donations themselves versus the matching pool. I think there were a few things that you can attribute to this change. One of them is that there's just a lot more great projects in Gitcoin Grants right now. So that pool is going to get spread a little bit more thin between all these projects. And on the other side, there's just more people that are contributing and donating. Maybe some people made a bunch of money yield farming and they want to kind of give that back. So we're seeing more money coming from one side, and on the other side, we have pool is the same amount, but it's getting spread out a bit more. Also, a lot of this pool ended up going to one project, which was research for the EIP 1559 proposal. I'm not going to get into the details of EIP 1559, but it's a really cool, interesting system to change the way gas works on Ethereum. It's awesome to see all this support for that project. One thing I'll say is, I think this is such an important change to the base Ethereum protocol. I kind of feel like this is the place where the Ethereum Foundation should be funding it, as opposed to the community. Maybe we will see more money coming from them as a result of all this community support, but it'll be interesting to see if, in subsequent rounds, if Gitcoin Grants is going to be a system for the community to signal their support for a project, as opposed to it just being used to really fund application projects. Last thing, so there is a ton of interest in DeFi and Ethereum in general right now. It seems like everybody is building something, but there is one person who's made it very clear that they are not building on Ethereum. Well, maybe we can convince him in the future. Anyways, that has been another crazy week in crypto. Thanks for joining, and I will see you guys next week.